Hi, and welcome to Writing Essentials with Mrs. Benson. Today, we're going to talk about planning out and drafting a narrative. The most important thing to consider when you're planning your narrative is first to come to the table with the story that you want to tell. So you need an idea of the event or the experience that you want to tell the story of. If you don't have the idea yet, you really can't do a lot of planning. So the first step before even diving into planning is to know what you want to write about. Okay, so once you have the idea of that event or that experience that you think would translate well to a narrative on the page or the digital page, you then want to plan. I highly recommend you think about the logistical structure of your narrative before you just open your fresh Google Doc and just start typing the story. This will allow you to think ahead as to where you want to spend the most time with your writing, how you want to pace it, what things you can leave out, what things you must include. And also, when you get a little bit more sophisticated with your writing, how you might want to manipulate your telling of the story. Not every story has to be told from the beginning to the middle to the end. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. So, my best recommendation when you're planning a narrative is to think about what's called a storyboard. And that's essentially just having in your mind what scenes there are in your story. Okay. And this is very much in a linear fashion in real time, what you did first, what you did second, what you did third, so on and so forth. Now, in fancy literary terms, there's what's called plot structure. And with plot structure, you have things like titling those parts of the story as the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. But really, those are just dividing the story into its different parts. For our purposes today, let's just think of them as different scenes taking me along the journey of the experience. Okay. So I encourage you just to put little blurbs in each box for each scene of your story. Okay, so if I were telling the story of when I fell off my scooter at 4 years old and all my teeth fell out, not all my teeth, my two front teeth fell out, I would think about, okay, there was the part where I decided to go ride on my scooter. There was the part where I was playing with my friends. Then there was the big moment where I fell and I lost my teeth and there was blood everywhere. And then there was the time that then after that was when I was crying and yelling for my mom. And then there was my mom consoling me. Okay, so those are like my different parts. So I put those pieces into those slots in order to kind of think about the different scenes of the story. Now, to up the sophistication of your story, if you're interested, you can manipulate those boxes. And so just because I started with deciding to go grab my scooter, that doesn't mean that's what I have to have as the very first lines of my actual narrative that I produce. I might decide, you know what, I want to start with the most dramatic part. And that was when I actually hit the handlebars of the scooter and knocked my teeth out. So maybe I'm going to start with my climax. And then I'll do a flashback. That's the term we're talking about here. And I'm going to now go back to talking about it all started when I had decided to grab my scooter that morning. And then I go to that piece of narration. Now, I will give you the forewarning that this is a more sophisticated approach to delivering a narrative. If it scares you, don't do it. Just stick with the linear approach. But if it's something that seems interesting to you and thinks would grab your readers more and make it more dynamic in your storytelling, go for it. We see this all the time when we watch movies. We'll watch a movie and the opening scene makes no sense to us whatsoever because we've started in the middle or we've started in the end. And then the storyline takes us back to the beginning or flashes back to earlier scenes in order for us to fill in the pieces of the puzzle. So if you want to add some suspense suspense factor, you might consider doing this, but you certainly don't have to. It's up to you. You're the writer, and this is your narrative. Now, after you have just the basics of scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, the basic components of your plot, you'll want to start thinking about where you can place some description and some dialogue. Depending on the confines of your prompt and the requirements of the assignment, you can add more or less of this. If you are writing a 20-page narrative, you will have many points of description, many, and you will have several points of dialogue, more likely than not. But if you're writing a 1 or 2 or even, 3-page narrative, that's not very long at all. Think of the novels that we read. Those are 200 pages. So think 3 pages. I don't have the capacity to describe everything, but I should describe significant, important things that will have a lot of impact. So pick a few points. I like to think about, when am I going to describe the place? When am I going to describe a character? Maybe it's me, maybe it's my mom, maybe it's some figure in the story. When am I going to describe surroundings? So think about at least having a big moment of describing setting and a big moment of describing character. And then there can be little moments sprinkled throughout, but we just want to have a couple of those really big moments of description so that you can do this really wonderful writer's trick, and that's establish mood. You can really set the tone of your story by how you describe things. And so it's important that we do that so that we add more dynamics to the story and the story is more interesting, rather than just, I rode my scooter, I hit my teeth, they fell out, it was very bloody, I didn't like it, my mom helped me. Blech. That's not a fun story. That's, well, not fun regardless, but it's not a very interesting story. It's not a captivating story. The other piece that you'll want to think about is, where do I want to have some dialogue? Again, you are the writer, you get to decide what conversation amidst this experience was significant, and what conversation can I utilize to move the plot forward. It's not just thrown in there because I had to do it for my narrative assignment. Now, that dialogue might be the start of the story, the thing that got the ball rolling for the events that transpired. It might be something in the climactic moment. It might be a part of the resolution. So you decide where that dialogue will have the most impact. It wouldn't make sense in my scooter narrative to have the dialogue be about me eating a sandwich earlier that day. What kind of sandwich do you want? Oh, I think I want peanut butter and jelly. That dialogue doesn't do much for my scooter story, right? I'm trying to tell about this really exciting moment where I lost my 2 front teeth. The sandwich isn't really relevant, right? So you don't want your dialogue to be a throwaway. You want your dialogue to be something meaningful to the purpose of telling the story, to the main idea, to the big moment, or to the big purpose of what you're writing. So 2 to 3 key moments of description, and then at least 1 key moment of dialogue would be great to add those narrative elements to your story. And I think it's always a powerful idea, or a powerful tactic, to decide these things beforehand. Again, remember, we haven't even started the actual composing of the narrative. We're just thinking ahead. We're having ideas about where we can put things, planning it out. This is kind of like the game plan if you play a sport, or what the coach will present. We're not in the game yet, but this is the plan we have. And obviously the game was going to present some hiccups or some, roadblocks to that plan, but at least we have a plan going in. Now, after you have your plan, you just write. That's it. Don't be afraid. Dive right in. Now you don't have nothing. You have a plan. So with that plan, just think about translating it to the page. And it doesn't have to be good. It could be horrible. It could be your worst writing you've ever done, but it's a start, right? So take what you've done in your storyboard and translate that to the page. And when I say translate, that means you're actually putting it into sentence form, okay? When you're doing that, take the pressure off, just get it out there on the page. It doesn't matter if it's this long and you're supposed to make it that long. Doesn't matter if you only make half a page when you're supposed to be producing 2 pages. It's the first draft. It's more likely than not going to be shorter than your final draft will be. More likely than not going to be your best product, but it's your start. And it allows you then to do this wonderful, wonderful skill, to exercise this wonderful, wonderful skill in practice that you really got to get comfortable with. And that's the idea of revision. Any good writer is a writer of multiple, multiple, multiple drafts. So it's not as though good writers just have it in their mind, put it on the page, and walk away. It is a laborious process of revisiting and revising and editing and editing and adding and subtracting and looking at it again and again and again. Now, I'm not going to belabor the issue too much with you for our writing assignments, just a couple pages, but it's something to think about, okay? So just write, dive right in. You can do it. I look forward to reading what you compose. Until next time. There we go.